This video is on simplifying algebraic expressions. So there's a couple of different terms we need to go over before we can start doing that. One of those terms is, what is a term? And so in algebra, a term is a variable that can or cannot have a number, like a coefficient. And we're going to be working with terms that are called like terms. And so like terms are terms that have the same variables raised to the same power. These are all like terms here. But x, x squared, x cubed, are not like terms. So again, not like terms because they're not the same variables. So it's important that they have the same variable and the same power in order to be like terms. And the reason that like terms are important is because we can combine them using addition and subtraction, which we can't do with unlike terms. But before we can start adding like terms, we need to briefly talk about what a coefficient is. So a coefficient is the numerical factor of a term. It's basically the number that you can factor out of the term. So I could make a table here and put in some terms. And then figure out their coefficients. So the number that I could factor out of this term is 2. So its coefficient is 2. Now if I wanted to factor out a number from y over 3, that number is going to be 1/3. So that's its coefficient. For 0.5a squared, the coefficient would be 0.5. So coefficients can be fractions or decimals. They can also be negative numbers. So here I have a negative x, and I can't factor out any numbers because I don't see any numbers multiplied by it except for 1. Because you can always factor out 1 from anything. So it's going to have a coefficient of -1. And then the -3, its coefficient is -3. So even though it doesn't have a variable, doesn't mean it can't have a coefficient. We can combine like terms by adding their coefficients. So if I wanted to do 2x plus 3x, I would add 2 plus 3, so 5, and get 5x. So I don't change the variable at all. Don't change its power, I just change the coefficient. So -3y plus 2y, I would do -3 plus 2, which is -1. So then I would have -1y. And we don't write the -1 as a coefficient, you just leave off the 1. If I had 1/2 x plus x, I could add it the same way, so that you would fractions without variables. So that's like having a coefficient of 1 because there's only one x there. So I could rewrite that as 2/2 x, because that means the same thing as 1x. So then I would combine the numerators and get 3/2 x. So I'm going to do a couple of examples. And you'll get some problems like this where it says simplify by combining like terms. So I could have 4x plus 2x plus 7 plus 3. So then what are the like terms? The 4x and the 2x both have x, and it's only not raised to any powers. It's raised to the 1 power. So those are like terms. And then these two constants, 7 and 3, are also like terms. So I'm going to combine 4x and 2x. So 4 plus 2 is 6, so 6x. And then 7 plus 3 is 10. Sometimes they might not be written so that the like terms are grouped together. So I have negative 6y plus 2 plus y plus 6. I'm still going to combine the like terms. So I have negative 6y plus y. So that's going to be negative 5y. And negative 2 plus 6 would be positive 4. Then I could have an example like this where I don't have any like terms. So that cannot be simplified, because you can't combine a x to the 1 power and an x to the 2 power. In this section, we're also going to use something called the distributive property. So this property is if I have a sum or difference inside of parentheses, and I'm multiplying this whole thing by a factor, it's the same thing as multiplying each of those numbers by the same factor. So if I have 2 times x plus 3, I'm going to multiply 2 times x plus 2 times 3, which is 2x plus 6. Or if I had negative 3 times x minus 9, that would be like negative 3 times x. I'll do plus minus, so plus negative 3 times negative 9. So that's going to be negative 3x plus 27. Sometimes you might see a negative sign out of a set of parentheses. If you do, the number that you're distributing is actually negative 1. So that would be like negative 1 times 2x plus negative 1 times 4. So that's going to be negative 2x minus 4. So the effect of distributing a negative 1 through is that it switches all the signs. Both of those were positive, now they're both negative. In this case, if I multiply negative 1 by negative 3x, I'm going to get positive 3x. If I multiply negative 1 by a positive y, get negative y. And then negative 1 times negative 2 is a positive 2.
All right. So. Yeah.
So that's something to be careful of.
So I try to put some humor there at the same time. Try to apologize for this.
So now we're going to do a couple of problems.
I'll make these adjustments, but it's also important that something is not done.
Using combining like terms and the distributive property. So I could have 6, x plus 2 is 4x minus 5. And I should give that some instructions. So I'm going to say simplify the expression. So first I'm going to distribute the 6. So I have 6x plus 12. Then I'm going to distribute this negative here. So that's a negative 1. So negative 1 times 4x is negative 4x. Negative 1 times negative 5 is positive 5. So now I need to combine the like terms. So I have 6x and negative 4x. 6 plus negative 4 is 2, so that's going to give me a 2x. And then I have 12 plus 5. So 17. Now I'm going to do one last example with a fraction. So if I distribute the 1/3 through, 1/3 times 2 is 2/3 x. 1/3 times 6, 6 over 3, which is 2. Then that's going to be a negative x, and then negative 1 times negative 3 gives a positive 3. So now I'm going to rearrange this, which you're allowed to do because addition is associative. So I'm going to write the 2/3 x and minus x next to each other, and the 2 plus 3 next to each other. So in order to combine these, I'm going to need to convert this one, or the coefficient of this x, into a fraction. So I want to make it a fraction with the denominator of 3. So I'm going to do 3 over 3x, because 3 over 3 is equal to 1. And then I can go ahead and add the 2 plus 3 now. So that's going to be plus 5. So then I'm just going to combine these coefficients like you would normally combine a fraction. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So that's going to be negative 1/3 x plus 5. That is the simplified expression.